Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sideline Shenanigans podcast today with Jacob Maggerdan.
Dalton Phillips.
And welcome back, Dalton, to the pod, talking a little college football. You know, Dalton had to join me for that. Of course, some big recent news. We might as well go ahead and dive into that. Actually, first, I want to say, everyone, if you're watching, keep liking it up, subscribe, follow along, comment. Again, those things help a ton for boosting us onto the algorithm. And obviously, college football, kind of what this channel was built around. So it's fun to get back into talking some college football, even though we're a long ways away from the season. But like I said before. Glad to have you back on talking some football and big story starting out. Just have to start talk about it because Tennessee has the biggest name in the portal, and that is Nico Iamaleava.
The biggest clown in the portal is what he is. He's a
Dalton,
clown,
obviously,
goofball.
Dalton not happy about that, leaving the program, not taking the money. And again, this is something that me and him both have talked about off camera, but I think it's an issue that has become more prevalent now, which is why that revenue sharing thing that's going to happen in July could potentially be a game changer for the portal situation and recruiting in general. But him leaving and holding out, which is the first time that's ever happened in college football, holding out due to a contract and due to money, and it's because of some of the issues they have in the portal. And of course, NIL and the portal itself is good for what it was meant to be. But there's been some issues with it, of course, which has kind of been noticed all across college football. Everybody knows that there's been problems with the NIL. And so I figure that that's going to be the big pushing point in that July meeting is to try to figure this out because this situation here has caused Tennessee to be kind of looking for a quarterback before the season starts. On it, obviously, a team that wants to compete and go back to the playoffs because they returned a lot of their pretty good defense. And obviously, losing pieces on the offense was going to hurt them, but you still had the quarterback. And now that you don't have that, it's definitely something they have to try to build around. So obviously, going right into this Tennessee transfer portal and taking a look at the four guys that they've so far added in the portal, of course, coming from the fall session. Open it up with the number one guy that I believe they got in this portal session, and that's Star Thomas, the running back from Duke. Dalton, if you want to talk about him, I know you like this guy.
Yeah, he's an absolute stud. I liked him at Duke, and I'm hoping to find somebody to fill Dylan Sampson's spot because that guy was a stud for us. We relied on running the ball a lot, and with the quarterback situation now, it's probably going to be like that again. So I'm glad to have somebody at least to hopefully step up in his position there.
Yeah, and then you talk about running the ball. You look at the offensive lineman that
Yeah,
they've grabbed in the portal session as well. That's going to be big to running the ball. You're talking about Sam Pendleton, a guard coming over from Notre Dame who produces linemen like a factory. So you're getting a pretty good guy there who did start some games for Notre Dame and has, potential to play both left and right guard depending on what Tennessee needs them to do. And then of course you grab Wendell Moe, who is ranked really high in this portal session, ranked as a four-star. I'm a little bit lower on him than I am Pendleton. I think Pendleton would start over him, in my opinion. But Mo could also be a contributor, and it never hurts to have too many good offensive linemen. But
no,
that's a
never.
position that constantly faces injuries, constantly faces issues on the line. You need those guys to come in for you. And then, of course, the long shot, the guy that they're hoping can maybe produce and show the potential is Amari Jefferson, kid from Baylor School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, I mean, he's coming back home. He's trying to find a way to fit in. A Tennessee team that has probably a lot of receptions to go around because they've lost a lot of their big time producers at the receiver position. So maybe a new quarterback comes in and maybe he gets to be pretty good friends with Jefferson, and that creates a connection for them. Dalton, if there's anything else you want to say about the portal class you have so far,
We're looking for a quarterback. That's a big thing there. We've only got two scholarship quarterbacks, and you need three of those guys.
at
So
least, yeah.
at least, and I mean we have hope that we have a starter right now, but
Mhm.
you still always got to look and just hopefully find somebody and still pick up receivers like offensive weapons because we lost a lot of those not only to the portal but
Yeah.
graduate and hopefully go to the NFL and just keep building that offensive lineup so you can run the ball because that's what you're going to be doing most likely.
Yeah, again, that's going to be the pushing point for that offense. It's going to be what gets them going, gets them up and down the field. Is going to be the run game, probably. Moving on over to Virginia Tech. Of course, we'll start with our two favorite teams here, talking about players and obviously what have we added in the portal session so far. And Tech, to me, has had a phenomenal portal. It's really been Price's strong suit the entire time he's been a coach at Tech is his ability to recruit. We need him to figure out some things on the field, coaching wise, and those issues that have come up from him being a first time head coach and then having a first time OC, having a first time DC, a lot of coaching things that haven't worked out. But the recruiting side of things has been really, really nice. You look at the portal session from Virginia Tech, there's been a lot more players to look at here. obviously, than Tennessee's because theirs was a little bit smaller. Tech goes out and grabs three running backs because you're trying to replace a guy that was arguably a top 10 running back in college football, and I don't even think it's arguably. I think he was that good. And you went out and grabbed Braden Bennett, who is a running back, of course, coming over from Coastal Carolina. You also grabbed Terrion Stewart, running back coming over from Bowling Green, who is probably likely the starter for Tech next year. A guy that was a very good power back at Bowling Green, finishing up some classes there, so he didn't get to come in and be in spring practices in the spring game. So we haven't seen a lot from him. And then, of course, the D2 transfer in Marcellus Hawkins. This is a guy that has a lot of potential, but again, we don't know what he's going to be like at the D1 football level because he was playing D2 ball, and he's also coming off an injury. If you go back and look at his D2 stats from 2023, he was over a 1,000-yard rusher with almost 20 touchdowns on the ground, as well as close to being a 400-yard receiver. So he has the upside of being a really, really good back, and maybe that system of him and Stewart in the backfield can be that 1-2 punch of having the pass catching back and then the power back, especially in goal line situations and things like that. And then on top of that, Tech has Jeremiah Coney, who is already on the roster. So that's going to be an interesting position for Tech after they went out and grabbed a lot of running backs. Of course, trying to fill the hole again of Bashal Tootin. Moving on to the next position that Tech went out and grabbed in the portal. Obviously, this is one of their biggest additions that they made overall, would just be secondary players in general. Looking at the top guy here, Joseph Reddish. Of course, he's here because of Quentin Reddish, which is his younger brother. Reddish was playing in the lower conference of football. I'm not 100% sure if it was D2 or D3, but they're also trying to go get Nick Reddish, which is his youngest brother, which is currently a four-star safety. So you're trying to get the whole family together. So I like that move to just try to draw the other Reddish in. Isaiah Brown Murray, or IBM as we'll be calling him, which is pretty good. Nice initials there. He's going to be more of a slot corner, nickel corner type of guy that will play at Tech. Well, he will definitely be starting this year for us, though, with the losses we had at the cornerback position. And then moving on down to safeties, which is where we made our biggest additions, in my personal opinion, with Tyson Flowers and Isaiah Cash. These are both really good safeties. Both were the best players in their secondaries at the schools they were at. Cash was being pursued by some pretty big time schools, but Tech obviously needed a safety desperately, so I'm assuming he got a pretty good payday coming to Tech. And then Christian Ellis was really, really good when he was at New Mexico in his time. And then Sherrod Coville, more of the hoping he can reach the potential that he had coming out of high school. Seeing he was a four-star out of Virginia, and obviously went to Clemson. He was just more of a backup guy the whole time he's been there. So he comes over to Tech, maybe plays a little bit of help in the safety position. Then moving into the receiver position, which is going to be one of the spots that they have to replace a lot of depth. I mean, you're talking about all three or all four receivers mainly in your rotation of guys is gone. They all ended up going to the league, or in Gosnell's case, hoping he gets signed after the draft, of course. With the hands he has, I hope he ends up getting signed. But you grab Donovan Green, which to me was the biggest addition that they got in the receiver room. Donovan Green was really, really good at Wake Forest prior to his severe injury he had. If he gets back to that level, that's a great receiver that can honestly be our number one guy. Of course, having Aiden Green currently on the roster, we'll have two Greens on the outside playing receiver. And then, of course, the other receiver we added, which is listed as a running back here, and Cameron Seldon. I know you know well about old Cam Seldon. Of course, he
Yep.
had about 200 yards at Tennessee. Was a good kick and punt returner at times, though. That's kind of been his specialty while he was there.
He just didn't fit our scheme very much, honestly. He wasn't their kind of running back, and I don't know, he just wasn't like meant for us,
Yeah, and
honestly.
again, he's like a 6'2" running back, which just doesn't
Yeah,
really that doesn't work out too well. You want the guys to be
unless you're Derrick Henry.
yeah, unless you're a freak. Exactly, unless
Yeah,
you're a freak. So he moves back out to receiver, which is what he'll be playing at Tech. And in the spring game, had a very interesting play, a pass out to Aiden Green, and then Aiden Green throws a 57-yard touchdown to Cameron Seldon. So that was one play we whipped out, and that was kind of fun to see him get down the field. He's going to be one of the guys for sure at Tech. Was playing actually a lot of slot receiver for us, so I think that's probably what he'll come in at. But it'll be interesting to see if Tech can add anything else in the portal, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. And then other than that, the biggest additions we added was the offensive line. If you anybody here was a Tech fan or in Dalton alone, you know it too. Tech's offensive line last year was abysmal. It was really, really bad. Besides our left tackle, who ended up getting a bag from Auburn over $2 million. So when you're talking about the kind of talent that they had, it wasn't good. So they had to go out and grab guys that could be big time replacements. They went and scalped West Virginia. Grabbed four of their offensive linemen, three of which were really good players coming in, one of which is kind of a developmental piece. And then we grabbed their offensive line coach as well, who was up for the grabs of the Broyles Award just 2 years ago, being the best assistant coach in college football. I think it was a home run hire. It's the best thing Tech did all offseason. Grabbing Kyle Altuner, who will be the center 100% at Virginia Tech. This is a guy that is a redshirt freshman and has 4 years of eligibility. Obviously, going to be a very good center for years to come. Tomas Remack comes in, being, of course, a guy that was listed as an All-American at points in his career. Will be shifting over and playing right tackle, who, again, we had to replace our right tackle. Uh,
Parker Clemens sucks.
and I know it as well. It was rough. You can't be worse than
Yeah.
what we had at right tackle last year. Tomas Remack, again, a 6'6" guy can come in and be that, and obviously was our highest rated portal addition, one of the higher rated offensive linemen in the portal, and obviously getting their line coach is what got him. I mean, that was a phenomenal, again, hire by Tech. Then we grab Lucas Austin as well, a guy that has developmental potential. Again, a 6'7" outside guy that he's just a big dude, so he has potential at the tackle position. Won't be playing this year much. And then really no other big time additions on the offensive line. And then you move to the defensive line, the last unit that Tech obviously had to address. As you know, APR is going to the league and will probably be a second or third round pick. They've got to replace that kind of talent off the edge with some pretty good talent. And they go out and grab Ben Bell, who you might not know because if you watched Ben Bell last year, he only played in 4 games until he took his red shirt. So he played 4 games, he had 4 sacks. So he's bringing in the potential to be a guy that can give you a sack each and every game, which can kind of replace the APR, which I mean it's going to be hard to replace 16 and a half sacks and having 2 4-sack games last year. But Ben Bell has definitely got the potential to do it. And then the guy that I'm the most excited about coming off the edge, and James Junkham. This guy was a linebacker when he was at Eastern Michigan, was their leading tackler with over 90 tackles, but also showed some really promising edge ability. He's also 6'4", 250. So he's built more like an edge anyways. Tech will be bringing him off the edge in this season upcoming, and in the spring game, he was getting after it. This is a guy that looks like he can be a freak edge rusher, so maybe the combination of Ben Bell and James Junkham can actually be kind of equal to the production we got from APR. Again, it's going to be hard to make up for that. Also adding Jordan Bass, just a quick point here on him. He's a guy that can be a depth linebacker and help Tech out. Kind of like when I talked about you guys adding the receiver from Alabama. The potential
Mhm.
is there, but what will he be? He was good at times coming over from Hampton, Virginia. That's, again, why he's at Tech, because of that Virginia tag. And then last but not least, interior defensive line. And as you know, we lost one of the best interior defensive linemen in the country, and E.S. Peebles. So there was a need to replace him, but luckily Tech has talent currently on the roster in Kamari Copeland, who broke the all-time squat record at Virginia Tech while squatting over 650 pounds. So he's just a freak. They have that on the roster currently. So they went out and grabbed some guys that just have potential. You're looking at Arius Nash, who had 8 sacks at the FCS level last year from the interior defensive line. The potential is unlimited with a guy like that. If you look at the last year class of D linemen that we've been covering in our drafts, the one that was great in Walter Nolan, that's what he did, was 8 sacks. He was a big time pass rushing defensive lineman. Arius Nash is built just like Walter Nolan, 6'1", about 280 pounds. It's almost similar builds. Obviously, you're hoping Arius Nash can be that good. And then the big time developmental piece is Jazari Priester, a 6'8", 250-pound defensive lineman that is basically that run stopper. You throw him in the middle and let him take up 2 gaps. Hoping that he can become something, of course, but he is a long shot to be a guy that contributes coming over from Hampton, which is, of course, me and you have ties with that school. Obviously, our
Yeah.
good buddy was punting down there at one point. Uh,
Yeah.
so fun times with this group of additions with Tech, and again, I think they did a phenomenal job. There really isn't much more you could ask for. They went and addressed every need in the portal, and then obviously, like I said, we'll talk about it in just a second. The one more thing I hope they do and go out and add. So Dalton, climbing on over into the portal rankings. We're looking at the list of guys that are available, and we might as well go ahead and start it off with what is Tennessee going to do at the quarterback position. Dalton, if you look at this list of transfers, is there any one guy that stands out to you that you'd maybe like to add?
Uh, there's been talks of us getting Dylan Risk. I mean, he doesn't look too bad. He played like 3 or 4 games at UCF, and he looks like he could fill the role pretty well. And I'd love to have the guy the one spot again. Not gonna lie, but that's he's not coming back. Gio Lopez is a stud,
Yeah,
but he's going to UNC,
it seems to be the
and
looks for sure he's
yeah,
going.
yeah,
I think that like we talked about it before the video even started, a lot of
yeah,
these guys on this list left. Gio Lopez would be that best available guy behind Nico,
yeah.
of course, but you're not getting Nico back
No, no, we don't
unless
want him
something
back.
crazy happens. Um, Dylan Risk, I know you like. I like that you brought him up. A guy that has the potential to come in and play. You might bring in Risk just to
Yeah,
be a backup. He was a really quality backup at UCF. He proved in the games that he played in that he can kind of handle his own, and he wasn't turning the ball over much in those games, and he was controlling the game. So Dylan Risk might be the guy if they really want to start what is currently on Tennessee's roster. Of course, like you said before, they only have two guys under scholarship. They are kind of banking on younger players going out and getting a portal guy. I think will be the option they go with. Other additions that Tennessee could look to add is there's a couple backup quarterbacks that have they kind of stand out. And you're talking about Oregon's backup quarterback and Ohio State's backup quarterback. And these are guys that are not necessarily the backups. These are guys that are kind of down the depth chart. Two guys that have a lot of potential that were really high four-star recruits coming out of high school. I think maybe Tennessee will look at those guys. And, if they enter the portal, again, those are names I'd watch out for. Looking at the Oregon quarterback, of course, talking about Austin Novosad. If they can go out and add him, again, I think it's a guy that has a lot of potential. He was a four-star again coming out of high school, ranked very highly. Just hasn't really had the opportunity at Oregon, but of course, being locked behind Bo Nix and then Dylan Gabriel last year, there just really wasn't a chance to play quarterback up there. And they also seem pretty set on who they're going to start next year, and he just wouldn't have that role. So maybe he enters the portal, and again, I think that's a guy that has all that potential, has a big arm, so that's kind of the thing. Tennessee's offense definitely works with a big arm. They want to throw a lot of deep balls and then run the ball well, and that kind of seems like the kind of guy that could fit the system. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. And Dalton, if there's anything else you want to say about the quarterback class here, I don't think there's a whole lot left.
no, just gonna throw a little more shade at Nico. Yeah, I mean it really just surprised me because I thought y'all were joking with me. That my buddies all texted me one day. It was on Thursday, and they texted me and go, "Look who's leaving." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're kidding me!" So I thought it was a joke. And then I researched it more and more, and then like all this comes up that his dad was texting. I mean, that's probably his biggest thing there. Is his dad was his financial manager. That's probably not a good idea there. Yeah, because obviously he's going to want more money. And I think that we would have gave him the money if he wouldn't have just sat out. But
Yeah.
he
I think
decided
the
that he
whole
wanted to
situation went
be greedy,
sideways.
so he's going to lose money.
Yeah, I think that's actually what will end up happening in this
Yeah.
situation. Of course, this is more of the second half of this video, so we're going to start talking a little bit about the guys that we think have the potential to end up in places. Starting here, of course, we're going to talk about Nico to start it because he is the biggest name in the portal left, and there's really nobody that even compares to him. Honestly, I think it's down to one school right now, and we're looking at UCLA. He was in talks with Tulane. He was in talks with UNC. As you see, he has the 24/7 prediction from UNC, but again, that has been completely shut down, so that's not happening. UCLA is it. That is the last school that has been in firm contact with him, and of course, that's where he's from. He's from the West Coast. They do have a little bit of money, but they're not going to give him what Tennessee was going to give him. So
Yeah.
again, in this situation, if this is what happens, it seems like a poor financial decision as well as a poor football decision. Again, you're not going to be at a school that can probably, again, compete for a playoff spot like Tennessee was going to be able to do, and you're not really helping your draft stock. And I will say that there is some things that can make a little bit more sense than just pure money. Tennessee does not run a system that is very favorable for an NFL quarterback. It is not a system that is, it's not structured around what will you do when you get to the league. It's structured more around what can you do now for us while you're in
Yeah.
college. And we've seen this before. Quarterbacks want to sometimes play for developmental coaches. We don't see the USCs of the world winning and going to the playoffs. But with Lincoln Riley, what do they want to do? They want to go there and develop because he prepares them for the NFL
He
pretty well.
produces NFL talents. Yeah.
Yes, and that is something that maybe you can harp on Tennessee for is that they're not really set up for that. But again, I don't think UCLA is much better. So if that's where he ends up, again, I think it's a bad idea. Um, Talk about the other two guys here that have big time potential. Jaden Rashada was a highly ranked recruit coming out of high school. He's done nothing in college. He's had no playing time, and he made, again, in my opinion, a poor decision transferring out of Arizona State originally and heading over to Georgia. And then, of course, he goes from Georgia to the portal. This is a guy that I think will be starting for some non-power school next year. I think that if somebody is willing to take a shot on him in the non-power section, which they will, maybe he shows the potential that he could have been at these bigger schools. And then last but not least, the guy that is probably before Nico entered was the best quarterback in the portal, in my opinion, and Gio Lopez, which also just recently entered the portal. Kind of a surprise because South Alabama, of course, was competing where they were at, and Gio Lopez can actually be a really good quarterback. UNC being the favorite here, and from what I've read and what I've looked into, it seems like they're almost surefire going to get him because they wanted to go out and get a quarterback anyways in the portal after losing some quarterbacks from last year's team. And Gio Lopez will realistically give UNC a chance in the conference. And again, if he's as good as he was at South Alabama, which we don't know how that translates, from the smaller schools to the bigger schools, sometimes it doesn't work out. But he has a lot of potential. Dalton, is there anything else you want to say about Gio?
He's just an athlete, and I mean, I feel like he under Bill Belichick, he might shine a little bit. It could be a highly rated draft prospect soon. You never know.
Yeah, and again, you're going to Belichick, who's a guy that's worked
Yeah,
with quarterbacks and had success, of course. And who
as
knows,
the goat. Yeah,
maybe he has a guy that's down there quarterback whispering and helping Lopez get a little bit better.
yeah,
I don't know if that happens or not. I don't know the relationship, but of course it's definitely, it's something that can look promising for a player is to go down there and play with a guy that produced one of the greatest players of all time in any
yeah.
sport. So,
I think he is the greatest
well, he's
athlete
definitely
ever,
the best quarterback.
besides Michael Jordan, obviously. But
Yeah, he's definitely the best quarterback, not debatable.
yeah,
Moving over to the running back position, looking at the running back, what's left here, we did have the big addition of Jaden Ott to the portal just 3 days ago. He has already confirmed that he's going to Oklahoma. Oklahoma has added some unbelievable weapons. Look for that team to push in the SEC next year and at least be competitive. They weren't that great last year. They have just gotten way, way better in the portal session so far. We look at the running backs left here. Not a ton of names here to mention, but some guys that can definitely produce at schools. We talked about Kylan James last year
Colin James. Yeah,
covering UNLV. He definitely had some games where he looked promising. And then a Marion Peterson, a guy that coming out of high school was listed as an athlete, fully committed to playing the running back position. I think he has potential, but again, we haven't seen it really come out yet and be this superstar guy. And then looking at the rest of this portal class here, it's not super strong at the running back position. Of course, Ott being the last one to commit, probably the last superstar you're going to grab. That's pretty much it for running backs. Not a lot to talk about. You move over to receiver. Dalton, if you want to talk about it, there's two big names at the top of the list, and honestly, you could say three.
yeah. Pena and Cook are both studs.
Mhm. And yeah, Trebor Pena, we talked about him when we covered Syracuse last year.
Yeah,
The potential is very high. This is a guy that may end up going to a big time school and being a contributor. Also, a recent addition to the transfer portal, listed as a 4 star. This is easily the best receiver left in the portal, in my personal opinion. Of course, Jonte Cook, originally at Texas, going to Washington. And then Trey Davis, a guy that had a lot of potential coming out of high school, ended up at Kansas State. Maybe he can be a game changer for
yeah.
somebody if they want to take the shot with him. We'll see what happens with that situation. And then again, you look at this; it's loaded with a lot of different talent in this portal session. And JMU just had a receiver enter into the portal. Of course, that was looking to be their starting slot receiver. He's available now too. So this is an interesting portal. But Trebor Pena definitely headlines
Yeah.
what's available.
Come to Tennessee, man. You'll start.
Yeah, I think if Tennessee can go out and grab a quarterback, maybe they can
Yeah.
convince some guys. Moving on over to tight end here. This is a position that isn't logjam with talent. Honestly, again, we talked about it before. If you're going to grab a portal guy, you want to do it in fall. That's where a lot of the big time difference makers are usually available. Now, of course, this year we've had one of the biggest names in the portal, of course, coming from Tennessee. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't. So again, this talent here is just not amazing. But Iowa's tight end would be listed as a 4 star, not listed currently on the rankings for 24/7, is probably the biggest name left. If you can go grab him, they produce tight ends like crazy. So again, potential is definitely there from that position, but just not a lot available here. Moving over to the offensive line, you're looking at a guy from South Dakota who, again, he was dominant at that level of football. If somebody is in desperate need of an offensive tackle, you're looking at a 6'7", 315-pound guy coming from South Dakota who plays hard-nosed football. There's a lot of potential here. Of course, we just talked about the big time guy in the offensive tackle portal. Not a lot left here. Jalen Early was a recent entry coming over from Florida State. Again, that guy has potential. Again, it just wasn't going to work out for him there, so he ends up leaving. Then we'll move over and look at the interior offensive lineman. Again, not a lot left here at that position. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, again, if you're going to add a difference maker at this point, it's definitely pretty hard to do so. But Wendell Gregory can be a guy that can be a difference maker. He realized that there wasn't a lot of potential to be an edge rusher at South Carolina. Of course, they went out and added Demon Clowney in the portal, which of course, cousin of Jadavion,
Yeah.
goes into South Carolina, and he's even looking to maybe be a depth guy. So if he's going to be a depth guy, then Wendell Gregory certainly wasn't going to be a starter. So I get him entering the portal, maybe trying to find
Yeah,
him.
that South Carolina defensive line is dirty. That's one of the best in college football. So I'd imagine I would transfer out of there if I wouldn't think I was going to play either.
Yeah, and again, he is a guy that maybe you can add late in the process that can be a difference maker. Not a lot of that left in the portal. TJ Bush is also a guy that's pretty good coming from Liberty, was one of their best edge rushers, and was kind of their best defensive player overall. He can be a difference maker in the portal potentially for somebody. Maybe look for him to stay in Virginia, go to one of those schools. I wouldn't mind adding him as depth at Tech. Going over to the defensive line, again, hard to add depth at this position right now. We talked about Philly last year when we talked about Boise State. He has a little bit of potential, but again, there just isn't a lot left here. This is what ends up happening late in the portal session. Moving over to linebacker, which has probably the second best available transfer left, and that is in Mekhi Bayer. This is a guy that coming out of high school was a very highly rated linebacker who went over to Nebraska, didn't really find his role there, goes to Missouri, ends up entering the portal again. And again, whoever gets this guy is getting potentially one of the better linebackers that was available in the whole portal process. So he is a great late addition for whoever can find him. I haven't seen any reports on specifically where he may go, but there's a lot of teams that can use a linebacker, especially one that is as good as he is. So we'll see if he ends up landing somewhere. Then we dive into the DBs. Julian Neal is very good. Of course, he enters the portal here coming over from Stanford after Troy Taylor was fired down there. So he's had a little bit to be in the portal, and teams can contact him. So we'll see if he works up anything. I think there's definitely some potential there for him. And then there's a couple other guys like Tavoy Fegan that just didn't find his spot at Clemson, was also a highly rated recruit. And again, the secondary finds in the portal are a little bit better at this point. It's just still not the best. We always say that if you're going to change your team, you do it in fall. If you want to sprinkle in a couple extra pieces, it's in the spring portal. Lastly, moving over to the safety position, Gregory Smith would be the guy that highlighted here. Of course, he was very good coming out of high school. There's potential that he can be a difference maker for a Power 4 school. Just not thinking, I guess, he was going to start at Florida. But again, this guy will probably end up at a Power 4 and be a starter for somebody. So he's a difference maker left. All that to say, we're going to move over and look at the on three rankings because on three is a little bit more updated on certain players. Diving into the on three rankings, you're looking at quite a little bit of difference, honestly, that we didn't see on 24/7, and it's to talk about some more quarterbacks here. If you're Tennessee and you're looking for a potential quarterback to maybe be a backup or a guy that can push for the starting job, I like Chandler Rogers. I think he has a little bit of potential. Of course, leaving Cal with the situation that they've had and the quarterback coming in, and then maybe Brendan Sullivan, a guy that at Iowa at times it definitely wasn't the best, but he had games where he was nice and led their offense and has a little bit of a rushing ability, which is something that I've heard you mention that you would like at Tennessee.
Yep.
And again, it's similar to what we've looked at before. Nate Yarnell sitting in the portal right now, coming over from Pitt. But again, it's not really a super deep portal. Honestly, there just isn't a whole lot available at this point because all the big time names usually want to get their job and be ready for spring. So again, if Tennessee wants to add something, there's just not a lot left. Moving over to the running back position on three, you're looking at some names that again we didn't see last time, but it still ends up being a rather weak position to add. If I was looking at anybody that has the potential to be a decent ad, it's probably the guys we've already spoke about. I don't see a lot here, so you're looking at a position that isn't really that deep. There's not a lot available at
There's
this.
just not that much available there.
Moving over to receiver, Dalton, if we want to go ahead and talk about the top guy, as it's a guy we've covered a lot,
Yeah.
covered Boise State.
Yeah, you talk about a guy from Boise State besides Ashton Genty. This guy was just that guy. If Genty was getting stuffed, he was getting the ball. That's who got the ball if Genty didn't. And that's a big time talent there. And if he would be lucky to come to Tennessee, honestly, that would be a perfect fit for him. He could camp right at Tennessee. I'd be perfectly fine with that. I liked watching that guy play football. Heck of an athlete, and he caught the ball. That's what he was good at. And
Yeah, of
he
course. Again,
especially a third down machine. He was a third down machine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and a bigger receiver too, 6'2", a guy that can
yeah,
be one of those outside receivers, and honestly, a surprising portal entry. We did not think that he was going to enter the portal. Seemed like he had a pretty good thing going with Maddox Matson in that Boise State
yeah.
offense. He does end up in the portal, of course, a guy from Texas. So I'd say watch out for the Texas schools. You're looking at, Texas, who did just add a receiver coming over from Stanford due to the Troy Taylor firing, which is one of the best additions so far in the portal. And then you're looking at maybe a Texas Tech who's spent a lot of money in the portal session so far. A&M potentially looking at him. But again, it's just a Texas guy, so he probably ends up at a Texas school. And then last but not least, we'll take a look at the tight ends on the offensive side, as there's a couple names in here as well. Kendall Carr was pretty good at Coastal Carolina. Maybe he ends up somewhere and becomes a difference maker. And then other than that, again, the names we've mentioned before from 24/7's rankings. A lot of the big time guys have already been committing and going to schools. If you're a team like Tennessee that's in the late process of looking for a quarterback, or some of these schools that want depth pieces, maybe you can grab them. But the best available guys are gone. We'll go ahead and start talking about what we kind of begin the video talking about. And it's Dalton, what do you think Tennessee needs to do to try to get back into that competing area and be an SEC team that can make a playoff push?
Honestly, I would like to increase our weapons because we lost a lot. Like you lost Brew, you lost Squirrel to FSU. That's a sleeper pick for Nico to go down there because I know him and Squirrel. I go ahead and call that. I said FSU. That's what I said from day one. And I mean, we just lost a lot of like just skill position guys. I would just like to get our offense buffed up again because like our defense like in 2022 wasn't very good, but like we still won a lot of ball games because our offense is so like high scoring. I mean, we can win ball games there. I mean, obviously, I'd like to have a good defense, but Heupel's offense is just so like aloof. It's just so good, and that's just what he does. He scores touchdowns. We honestly didn't see that a lot this year, unless we played like weaker teams. So I feel like Nico just wasn't a perfect fit for our offense. I mean, obviously Nico's good. I'm not going to hate on the guy. He's a great athlete, but he just didn't fit our team perfectly. Like Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton. I think honestly, Joe Milton filled the scheme better than Nico did, and that's crazy to say because I really
Yeah.
didn't like that guy.
I
But
mean, Joe Milton's issue was never his arm
yeah,
talent. His issue was
he
always
is a cannon. Yeah,
had mental errors a
yeah,
lot. And again, you talk about adding weapons. I'm on the
yeah.
same boat over here at Tech. Again, Christian Fitzpatrick was on campus during the spring game. If you remember Christian Fitzpatrick, he was the guy that had the one-handed Moss catch from Marshall on
Oh,
the
okay, that makes
sideline.
that
Uh,
that was crazy. Yeah, that was
yeah,
absurd. Yeah,
that was a ESPN top 10 play for the
yeah.
year last year. It was an
Best catch. That's the best catch I've ever seen in person before.
Yeah, in person for sure. I mean, it was
Yeah,
unbelievable. It was literally a ridiculous catch. He could be a huge addition to Virginia Tech. It's a 6'4" receiver, and again, they need that. They need a super tall, big time weapon on the outside. They just lost to Quan Felton, who was doing that for us before. Of course, he was that same size, producing at the outside position. Again, to me, Christian Fitzpatrick is the guy. Go out and fix that issue, grab him, and then you finish off your portal session with a pretty good overall team with a lot of potential in the ACC. Again, we have to have health. That's always going to be the big thing. And then, of course, seeing if Terrion Stewart can be the guy that he, is trying to follow up, which was one of my favorite players to ever play at Virginia Tech in Bashal Tootin. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up.
yeah,
That's us looking over the entire portal, looking at guys that we think have potential. And then, of course, the main part of this video, talking about what we think Tech and Tennessee will do. Tennessee being the biggest talking point because they're probably amongst the top teams that have to do something in the portal. They have to either grab a depth guy to be a backup quarterback, or they want to look for maybe a starter. The last thing I want to mention is Tennessee is definitely a school that can draw some guys in. So watch out for some big time names. Names that have been floated are Noah Fafita from Arizona. Again, a guy that did not succeed last year but had a huge NFL hype coming off his first season there. He could potentially be a guy that if he enters the portal, Tennessee would definitely look to grab him. And they have the money to certainly add a guy
yeah.
like him. They were probably going to end up paying like Nico, like you said, if the whole issue hadn't happened. Also, I would say look out for a guy like Haynes King. There's been some rumors that if Tennessee had the money, they could maybe draw a Haynes King over. Now, it's
I
going to
love
be
that guy. I
it would
love
be
that guy. I would love
very,
to have
very
him.
difficult to add Haynes King.
Yeah,
He is he is the system at Georgia Tech. He
yeah,
fits them perfectly. He's in a system that they can win football next year. Also, he's in the ACC where he can compete a little bit better. But again, if Tennessee comes calling with a pretty nice payday, there definitely is some things that can convince a guy to enter the portal and come over. Again, tampering, but it's not. Everybody does it now. Dan Lanning was actually the guy that called Tennessee and said,
Yep.
"Hey, go searching for deals, just so you know."
Yeah.
So it does happen. Tampering, unfortunately, is something that does happen. So maybe that will get fixed a little bit in July when the new share comes around, the revenue sharing meeting.
Yeah, there was rumors that Nico was doing it like right before the
Yeah.
playoff game, and I was like, "That is insane." Think about that, going into a playoff game thinking you're going to leave. That's just crazy to me. That shows you what kind of like the locker room was like at Tennessee. That's the reason we can't win ball games like the big ball games. You got to
Yeah.
have a team mentality there.
And you can't have your leader being the guy doing it.
No.
Unfortunately, that was just the situation that occurred last year. And again, you get the side of him wanting to get into a better system potentially. You get the side of him wanting to make his money now. You never know how long your career is going to last. But the issue is how he did it was just not right. It was not the way to go about it. It was not the way to just kind of create this scene and then entering the portal. Again, the final thing that he did, and again, making waves in what is the biggest addition to the spring portal we've ever seen. A guy that was a five-star quarterback, the number two guy in his class, and would have been number one in some classes if he wasn't behind Arch Manning, who
Yeah.
was, a number one perfect rated guy. Um, Dalton, again, if there's anything else you want to add, of course, this being your first video back, and hoping to
Yeah.
get you on the draft video because it is
Yeah,
our.
I will be. I'll be tuning in to
Uh,
some of those.
Anything else?
I just hoping we get a better portal, and I'm looking forward to the next this college football season. It's coming. It's coming fast. Hopefully.
Yeah, and last thing for me here before I close this out, I'm hype about Tech what they did. Now again, the issue is you got to succeed on the field. You got to see the coaching come through. They've added a new offensive coordinator in Philip Montgomery. They've added a new defensive coordinator in Sam Cephas. It is a completely different system. They are going to run three safeties, and that's why they went and added four of them in the portal. It's going to be different. It's going to be hopefully a change to what they were doing last year, and maybe we'll see the offense look a little bit better as well with a new coordinator coming in and hopefully some healthy quarterback play. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate it. It's definitely helps a lot when you guys like, subscribe, follow along. Leaving comments definitely helps too. And again, if there's any ideas or anything you'd like us to cover or anything you would want us to go over, we're definitely available to do it. Anything college football, certainly me and Dalton will dive into.
Yeah.
Me being a sports media guy, I literally will sit here and cover it all day. So,
Yeah.
again, anything y'all want us to cover, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.